Hola, bienvenidos a un té con manzanilla. Estoy muy contenta y con un gran honor de tener aquí a Anita Johnson, la autora de un libro que me ha cautivado y que creo que ya les he hablado mucho de él. Está con nosotros y para mí es un gran honor tenerla como invitada, así que no dejen de escuchar este episodio, sé que les dará mucha luz. A todos los que no hablen inglés, va a estar los subtítulos abajo para que puedan escuchar toda la entrevista y no se pierda nada. Vamos a dejar todos los datos de Anita aquí abajo. Y estamos buscando a alguien que pueda hacer su libro. I'm talking about your book. Please. Estamos buscando editoriales que ella ya tiene la traducción. Si alguien está interesado en el libro, aquí está. Por favor, escríbanos. Es muy importante para nosotros que lo podamos leer en español. Gracias. Anita, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor and a big pleasure to interview, to talk to you, to chat to you, because, wow, you have such a big wisdom, but an inner wisdom, like, at least for me, open my heart in so many ways and give me guidance to understand the eating disorder that I struggled for so many years and now even understand myself now. So thank you. Thank you for create this.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Just I was thinking the other day, what can I ask her? I mean, there is so many and we only have like not too much time. So I would like to know how you start interesting in the world of eating disorders. Why?
Okay. Well, I've always been interested in women's issues. I'm originally from the island of Guam. And so it used to be a matrilineal culture before the Spaniards came and then the Americans came. And so some of that has continued to this day because I grew up in a multicultural indigenous household. And so I was always interested in women's issues. And then years later, when I was a psychologist and I was supervising a psychology intern in Hawaii, she was doing her doctoral dissertation on the incidence of eating disorders in Hawaii. And so we would get together to talk about this, and we were joined by another woman who was a social worker, excuse me, who had herself recovered from an eating disorder, but she had to figure it out all herself. So the three of us would meet and we would talk about what we were seeing in the community. And we kept saying, oh my gosh, there's such a big problem here. There should be a center for this. And after we said it for about the fifth time, we said, I guess we're it. So we created a center. And this is a long time ago. This is 1982. So back then, very little was known about eating disorders. Karen Carpenter had just died. Bulimia had just been diagnosed in the DSM, and binge eating wasn't even considered. So that's how I began, because what happened is girls and women of all ages, all sizes, all ethnicities would come to the center. And I was just trying to figure it out. How come, first of all, back then it was only females. How come these girls and women, and how come the struggle is around food and the body? So that was how it began. I had to listen very carefully to their stories to see if I could figure out what was the common thread that connected all these different individuals. And so that began my journey of really trying to understand not just eating disorders, but disordered eating and all different kinds of eating difficulties.
Wow, I love when you say like listen the story. I think your
Mhm.
book is about listen the story, um, not just listen the issue or the symptom or the surface. And that's a big part because sometimes, at least, well, I think it's a worldwide problem, but at least if we're talking about Latin American treatments, most of them are concentrated in the symptoms and stop the symptoms, right? As
Right.
as fast as they can. And in some part that's happened to me when I recovered for the first time. the treatment was good was successful because I stopped doing the behaviors. Okay. But I never go inside of me. And I feel like really no one interested in my story. I just was another story, another story more with a girl with eating disorders. So I don't know if you grow up with this sense of listening or how you pull to understand so deep the eating disorders.
Well, I noticed too back then that the way the treatment was is that they just removed the symptoms. And back then it was just hospitals. People would go in the hospital, they refeed, they'd come out. And so then I started to realize, wait a minute, then it just keeps coming back. And so I thought of this metaphor of a weed, right? So if you have a weed and you just cut it off at the top, given the right circumstances, it's going to come back. But if you can go down and get the roots, you can clear it. And so that's what I started doing with eating disorders, trying to find, okay, what are the roots? What's feeding this disordered eating? What the causes are? And I discovered that one of the main things is that girls and women that were struggling with disordered eating were very emotionally sensitive and highly intuitive. But we live in a world that doesn't teach us how to be with those very strong feelings. And so what happened is that, and it goes way back to like being a small child and noticing things that maybe others didn't notice. So you would say things like, but mommy, if daddy loves us, how come he doesn't come home? Or, something like that a small child would say. Excuse me. But what would happen is rather than them being listened to, they were either ignored or maybe they were rejected. In some cases, they were ridiculed and other cases abused. So they had to find some way to dim their light, to diminish this capacity to see subtle realities that others couldn't see. And they started to think there was something wrong with them.
Yeah.
And so the eating disorder became a way to kind of try to fit in and try to push down those feelings and those intuitions that they were experiencing. And so that's what I started noticing when I started listening.
Wow. When you say that, is that part of the book when I start reading it, like, you describe it so good. I send it to some of my clients because you need to listen this and the why and the how these weeds spreading inside of you and just start the eating disorder, not just with the symptoms, the eating disorder starts since these feelings start growing inside of you. And you say it so nailed it, so good. They're like, you feel wrong. Something is wrong with you and you need to really clean it up. You need to be right and you want to. So the only way that you find out is the eating disorder and make you feel in some ways not that wrong, but then you feel worse, right? In the next years. So when you say, it's like you feel wrong. That's deep and feels wrong in so many ways. And understanding that part and matching with the culture that we grow up. I mean, at least in Mexico and all these countries, as a woman, you grow up like, okay, you come to the world to marry, to have kids, right? And don't be so quiet, but don't be so noisy. Don't be so attractive, but be attractive. Like all this double message all the time, and just control yourself in any ways, in any form. And it's so disconnected since you are really young.
Yeah. And so, excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. So the idea is that you feel like something's wrong, but you don't know what it is. So you think there's something wrong with you rather than maybe there's something wrong with these messages that I'm getting because they don't feel right.
Yes. So you internalize
Mhm,
that wrongness in you
mhm.
and you try to resolve it, right?
Right. Try to fix it. And
Yes.
then you think if I can just look like and act like and think like and feel like how I imagine other people want me to look and act and think and feel, that will solve the problem. But it actually creates a greater problem because it disconnects you from your authentic self.
Yes.
So whenever we're disconnected from our authentic self, we're acting like things are okay when they're not. We're saying yes when we want to say no. It creates a tension in our being. And it's that tension that we're trying to relieve by whatever the food behaviors are, whether it's restriction or binging and purging or yo-yo dieting or whatever, because we feel this tension now inside because we're acting one way and inside feeling another.
Yes. I love that example that you give with the towel. Like,
Mhm.
just can you explain us? Like, I love that metaphor.
Yeah. Well, so what happens is that for all of us, when we're little, we recognize that, or we feel we have two very strong drives. One is the drive for attachment and connection because we're mammals. We're not lizards. We're not um, turtles. We don't just hatch out of an egg and go our way. No, we're mammals. So we have to attach and connect with our caregivers, which is why we have this strong drive. But we also have another equally strong drive because we're human mammals, and that is the drive for authenticity. That is the drive to become who we're meant to be. We're all as unique as our thumbprint, right? And we all have a unique destiny that we are to live. And what happens in our childhood, these two drives come into conflict. And guess which one wins? Attachment. It has to, because we have to survive. We have to be fed and taken care of. So it's important that it win. And what that looks like is little kid wants a cookie. Mommy says, no, you can't have a cookie. We're having dinner in 2 hours. Little kid goes, I want a cookie. I want a cookie, right? And mommy says, if you don't stop that, you're not getting any cookies at all. So little kid goes, okay, I don't want a cookie, but little kid still wants the cookie. So here's that little bit of tension. And that's just one incident. It happens to all of us. But what can happen over time is that whenever these two drives come into conflict and attachment and connection wins, and we have to abandon our authentic self, it does start to create a little bit of tension. And then there's more tension. And eventually it becomes very painful.
Yeah.
And that's when we will turn to anything like disordered eating in an attempt to try to cope with that tension. So, really, with recovery, what recovery is learning the skills to be your authentic self and be in relationships at the same time.
Wow. That's powerful, because there is a lot of people that for sure happens to you that write it like how I can recover from an eating disorder. Like, it's the main question that I receive, how I can do it. And I always say, I never find, at least now, a people that doesn't want to be recovered from an eating disorder. All the people want it,
Right,
but they
right.
don't know how. Like, there is like a problem to understand, like, oh, she doesn't want to be recovered. She tried so many times, so she is not. She
Right.
really wants it, but they didn't find the way to go deep. Now I understand. Go deep and
Mm.
found their own selves, and you know what? Grounded that.
Mhm, mhm. And there are skills that a person needs. One of my favorite metaphors is the one of the log. And
Yes.
it's my it's my favorite because I still get emails from people all over the world saying this one story help them understand their eating disorder. So we start with, when we work with the metaphors, we work with the imagination. And a lot of people tell me, oh, I don't have a good imagination. And I like to say, well, what do you think worry is?
That's
Right?
true.
Worry is a bad use of a good imagination. So we all have good imaginations because
Yes.
we all know how to worry. So you imagine you're on the banks of a raging river. It's pouring down rain. You slip, you fall in, you're drowning, you're getting pulled down through the rapids, and along comes a big log, and you grab on, and the log saves your life. It keeps your head above water when surely you would have gone down. And eventually, it carries you to a place in the river where the water is calm. And from there, you can see the riverbank, but you can't get there because of the log. So the irony is the very thing that saved your life is now getting in the way of you going where you want to go in life. And to make it more complicated, there's always someone on the riverbank yelling, let go of the log, let go of the log. And you feel like an idiot. You think there's something wrong with you because you can't let go of the log. Well, the way I see it is letting go of the log may not be the best thing to do initially, because what happens if you let go of the log, start to swim to shore, get halfway there and realize you don't have the strength to make it? Well, that means you don't have the strength to make it back to the log either, and you're really in trouble. So I believe that we all have a wise part of ourselves that will not let us let go of anything until we're ready. So what do you do instead? Well, let go of the log and try floating. As soon as you start to sink, grab back on. Let go of the log and practice treading water. And when you get tired, grab back on. Let go of the log and swim around it just once and then grab on. Maybe twice, grab back on. Then try 10 times, 100 times, 200 times. Whenever you have the strength and confidence to make it to shore, then you let go of the log. So the idea is that the disordered eating, it has a job. It has kept you afloat in some very difficult emotional times. But the problem is that very process now is getting in the way of you going where you want to go in life. But there's some skills a person has to learn. And you have to understand that it has served a function, a very important function. And if you just try to take away the symptom without finding out what the job was in the first place, it's going to come back.
Yeah, you are going to be stuck in the log because you need it. I mean, you'll need it in the way to survive. You know what? It makes me think because I'm working with a client that she's telling me, I lost so many years in my life, and now I'm like 40, and I'm not do anything in my life. Like blaming herself for
Yeah.
the also many years that she been stuck there, but makes me think in this like. And I always say, like, it's because now is your time. Now you are ready. Before you wasn't. And it's this inner wisdom that you're talking about in the law makes me think in that. And the other, well, I can ask you another question after.
Well, it's sort of like you think of the story of maybe you take two children and it's Christmas time. And one child wakes up early in the morning and goes to find the presents left from Santa Claus. The other child sleeps in and maybe after a while wakes up and then goes to find her presents. Did one have a better Christmas than the other? No, right? It doesn't matter when you get the gift, as
That's
long as you get it.
it's beautiful. And when you get the gift,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Could you talk about that gift? Because you talk
Mm-hmm.
in the book. Because sometimes um this I forgot the word, like when you are really connected with yourself and you're highly sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's a burden, right? Like you feel
Oh,
it like,
yeah.
oh, I don't want to be like that. I
Yeah,
don't want to.
exactly. And that's why the eating disorder, because you're trying not to be so sensitive. So you're trying to numb yourself with food or escape from the feelings and so the problem is that that's never going to change. If you're born sensitive, you're going to be that way the rest of your life. And I happen to think that it's a good thing because think of how much better our world would be if our world leaders were more emotionally sensitive. Because what comes with that is a great deal of compassion and empathy. And that's what the world really needs right now. But it is a problem if you're very emotionally sensitive and nobody taught you how to deal with your feelings. Nobody taught you the true nature of our emotions. And so we think we have to get rid of them. And if we can't, there's something wrong with us. So often we're taught you're supposed to control your emotions. Well, guess what? You can't. You can't control your emotions any more than you can swim up a mountain. You can control the way you express the emotions, but not the feelings themselves, because they're not things. You can't hold sadness or anger or happiness in your hand. They're not things. They are waves of energy that are designed to move just like the waves in the ocean. They come in, they peak, and they pass. And they come in, they peak, and they pass. And so when you're emotionally sensitive, what you have to learn how to do is ride the emotions. So imagine if you went to the ocean with your boogie board and you stood there facing the waves with your boogie board in front of you. What's going to happen? Boom, you're going to get knocked down, right? You're going to get until you get this idea, wait, maybe I can turn around and I can ride that wave. Oh, here's another one. I'll ride that one. And eventually you get the hang of it. And it's even fun at times. And when the big waves come in, and they do for all of us that are on the planet for any length of time are going to experience the loss of a loved one or financial distress or medical crises, but you'll know how to ride them. So really changing your perception about you can't control the emotions, but you can learn how to ride them. You can learn how to express them differently. That's really the key.
And talking about learning, when is the best I mean it's not the best, but if you experience how we can teach this to our kids and how we
Mm,
can learn it when are adults.
yeah. Well, if I had it my way, this is what would be taught in every school in the world, right? Because
Yes.
this is, I don't know about you, but boy, I really struggle with algebra. And I don't use my algebra at all.
Yeah.
And so all that work, it's like for what? I didn't, I don't use it. But learning how to communicate my emotions, I do that every day.
Yes.
So that to me, um, it's a process of, first of all, identifying them. Just give them a name. A lot of times we say, well, I'm stressed. And that's as far as we go. And it's like, wait, no, what is the feeling? Is it frustration? Is it annoyance? Is it irritation? There's all these different feelings that we aren't taught just to name them. That takes some of the power away. And then so the first is to be able to identify them. The second is to be able to accept them. This is hard
Yes.
because it's like you have to say to yourself, I wish I weren't angry, but I am. I wish I weren't sad, but I am. So really just accepting that this is a part of the human condition. There's no way you're not going to feel your emotions. And you don't want to not feel them because that's your guidance system.
Wow.
It's your emotions that are going to let you know what's okay and what's not okay. If you didn't have them, you'd be like a robot. And then the third part is to learn how to express them in a way that respects and honors your experience and respects and honors the experience of another person. So that's the process that basically can free someone from an eating disorder. And so it's ironic because everyone thinks, okay, I got to control the food and I got to da 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 da. And or then, oh no, I got to control my feelings. It's like, no, it's really learning how to be with them differently and ride them.
How
Mhm.
to write it and how to accept them. That's what you say. It's the hardest thing. Like, okay, you need to sit with that
Yeah.
horrible feeling sometimes doesn't feel good. Sometimes feeling sad is really painful, or feeling anger, or feeling, I don't know, like all these kind of feelings, even happiness when it's too
Right.
much, maybe
Right.
something like, oh my God, is I feel it in my body, how I can control that happiness to don't bother. But you can't control it. And you need to just sit and feel it. It's going to pass. It's not going to forever.
Exactly. So the metaphor that I'd like to use, and this is the benefit that women have. Sorry, the men don't have this, but we get the experience of menstrual cramps.
Yes.
And with menstrual cramps, we know two things. One, we know even though it really can hurt, no damage is being done. And two, it will pass. And that's the same for our uncomfortable feelings. Feelings themselves cannot cause any damage. The inappropriate expression or the repression or the suppression of feelings can cause damage. And especially when the feelings get stuck in your body because you've held them back. But the feelings themselves, they're just energy. They don't cause damage. And because they're energy, they're designed to move. And so, like menstrual cramps, they pass.
Yeah. And in the most you let him pass easy, the most fast pass. Because when you resistance and when you like really want to control that feeling, you stuck there and you let the feeling getting even increasing or mix it with another feelings and the battle come there, right?
Mhm. And it's very scary.
Yeah.
Imagine if you didn't know why you had menstrual cramps. That would be terrifying, right? You just you're gonna think, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. When
Yeah.
really, no, it's just gonna pass.
In the past. And I love the story, by the way, that you write it because it's for you write it for your daughter, I think so,
Oh,
right? Beautiful story. Anyone that can really get the book, get it, please. It's a really good book. We want to find a way to. It's already in Spanish. We need an editorial here, please. If someone there, please, it's already you need it. I mean, it's not like something you need it. Um, for many reasons. You also talk here about the uh, feminine energy. I was like saying because
Mhm.
I swear, I never in my life listened feminine energy before I start working. You know, Victoria Kleinsman. I start working with her, and she was my recovery coaching. So, she started talking about me, and I never hear it before because at least no one in my family, no one in my culture is like. I mean, if I go with that now, they will say, like, "Oh, you are crazy. Why are you talking about that? That's like just, like just putting that information in the trash and makes me feel like I'm living in a different world." But
Mhm.
it's so important to understand how this energy really exists in ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're experiencing is that this is very new on the planet, this idea of the feminine principle. It's not that it's not been here all along, but it's now coming into consciousness. It's now coming into awareness. So even 30 years ago, when I was talking about this, people would go, wait, what are you talking about? What? But now more and more people are understanding. And so basically the idea is this, that there are two basic principles, and I call them masculine and feminine. If I were living in Asia, I would probably call them yin and yang, right? And there's this, because they are principles that exist within all of us, they're not genders. So it doesn't matter if you're male, female, trans, whatever. We all have these two components that I'm calling the masculine and feminine within ourselves, and it exists everywhere in the world. But we've lived in a culture that hasn't really recognized both of them in balance. So the masculine principle is the part of ourselves that is logical, linear, goal, achievement oriented. It's the part of ourselves that takes action and organizes and makes lists. It's a really valuable part, right? We really need this. But there's a whole other part of ourselves, which is the feminine principle, and that's the emotional, the intuitive, the instinctual, that's connected to the instincts of the body. That's the part that it cares about relationships. That's the part that is more inner. It's concerned more about being than doing. And so we have these two parts of ourselves, but because we live in a culture that has for so long, now I'm talking as long as maybe 7,000, maybe 30,000 years. That's what the researchers say. That's how long the patriarchy, and the patriarchy is not about men, it's just this imbalance of these two principles where the masculine qualities are overvalued and the feminine undervalued. Now, even though we both have these qualities within us, because women are the embodiment of the feminine principle, they've been devalued as well. But we're in the middle of a huge, huge shift on the planet right now. And so what's emerging is this understanding of the value of what the feminine has to bring, because the feminine is our heart. The masculine is our head. Again, you need both in this world,
Yes.
but you need them both in balance. And so there have been prophecies. One of the that this is the time for them to come into balance. There's one that's from South America about the condor and the eagle, and they're saying now that the time has come for the possibility. It's not inevitable, but humanity has to choose for the condor and the eagle to fly together. And the eagle represents the masculine principle and technology and the ways of thinking and creating. And the condor represents the feminine, the more indigenous cultures that are more connected to the earth. And so, again, it's in a lot of different traditions. It's been prophesied that now is our time. I happen to think that those with eating disorders are in some way assisting in this, because what's required for recovery is the development and the acceptance of the inner feminine, your emotions, the instincts of your body, so that you know when to eat, when to stop eating, when to rest, when to move, when to go to the bathroom, all those things, right? And our intuition, which is a whole other way of knowing. And so those are the qualities that someone develops as they recover. And so I believe this is their contribution to this process that we're in right now.
And it's a big contribution because when you live in an eating disorder, you must, I mean, most of the time the people is in the doing things, right? So
Exactly.
you are not with yourself, never. And it's like really hard to stop doing and to be
Yeah.
present, like just put it like and get this balance, as you say, when you start develop some resource and some skills, and then you get this start the connection start happening after you recover from the eating disorder. The
Mhm.
balances start and you start feeling like, what, I can sit in, I can rest.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I feel something. Something is preventing me. I start
Mhm.
feeling different things and I accept it, right? Because sometimes the intuition is there, but I used to just I don't care about it. Now
Mhm.
it is in my mind. Maybe it means something. Let's go guessing what it is meaning, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and the reason why the recovery journey helps with that is that you start to understand that whatever you're doing with food isn't really about the food. So, for example, if you are restricting your food, that's not the only thing you restrict. You may restrict your emotions. You might restrict new experiences. You might restrict intimacy. You might restrict sexuality. You might put yourself on restriction if you make a mistake, right? If you're struggling with binging and purging, for example, or yo-yo dieting, what you're going to see is a pattern in your life of taking in or taking on too much, too quickly, not being able to assimilate or digest, and then you have to get rid of it. So maybe you'll sign up for all these classes in school and it's too much and you drop out. Or maybe you start a bunch of projects and it gets overwhelming and you drop them all. Or maybe you meet someone and you fall madly in love with them, but as soon as there's a little problem, it's over. Or maybe you'll go shopping and you buy all these things, and then it's like, oh, I don't want this, and you take it all back. So you see this pattern that exists. It shows up with food, but it also shows up every place else. And if you're struggling with binge eating, what you're going to find is the theme of scarcity everywhere. It's not just there's not enough food, but there's not enough time. There's not enough money. There's not enough attention. There's not enough love, or maybe a feeling like you're not enough. So you can see these patterns that show up with food are really part of a bigger process in your life. And the good news is that when you address things in the other areas of your life, it affects what's going on with you and food. And when you address what's going on with you and food, it affects these other areas. So it's not like here's our life and then we have this eating disorder has its own little orbit. No, it's all connected.
Yeah, that's amazing. And um I was impacted with your stories here, with your metaphors. That helps me a lot to understand in a different way what is happening inside of me and what is happening inside of the others, right? And respect it, not just in eating disorder, which obviously your book is about eating disorder, but it could happen to any of us, and we develop different things because we are not having this balance of our energies for one reason, and this connection was just disconnected in so young age. So really the way that you talk and the way that you explain and the way that you made the story come to the words of eating disorder, I think creates a new way to understanding.
Yeah, because actually I didn't know this back then when I wrote the book, but now we have the neuroscience that now tells us what's happening. And so when I'm using a metaphor, when I'm using a story, it used to be that I would see in my client when they would get it, something, and I would see it in their eyes. I would see like a light comes on in their eyes. Well, now we know with neuroscience that what's happening in the brain when somebody is getting that is there's a part of our brain right here. It's right over our right ear. It's called the anterior superior temporal gyrus, big word. And what it does is it sends out a blast of gamma waves, and gamma waves are the highest electrical frequency in the brain, and they make new neural pathways. So essentially, with story and metaphor, I'm accessing this part of the brain that is actually changing the brain.
Wow, that's
Amazing,
deep.
right?
Yeah. So let's get started. Talk stories, right? That's why the kids love the stories, maybe, right?
Oh, yes. That's
Yeah.
why, and they like the same stories over. Can you tell me that story again? I
Yes.
was working with my grandson, and we were doing the Three Little Pigs. And he would say, okay, can we do it again? Can we do it again? Over and over and over. And even a story like that, you see, it looks like it's just a little story about the three little pigs, that one makes the house of straw, one makes the house of wood, and one makes the house of bricks. And when the big bad wolf comes, he can blow down the straw, he can blow down the
The wood.
wood, but not the bricks. Well, when you step back and realize, okay, there's a message in that story, right? It's telling you something. It's going in this side of the brain, and it's telling you that if you want something that's lasting, you need to put in a little extra work. You need to, need to not just put something up really fast and say, okay, that's it. That's kind of like the equivalent of eating disorders of just symptom removal. Okay, let's just get rid of the symptoms. Like, no, create something that has a strong foundation so that whatever happens in the rest of your life, you've got a strong foundation. So just a little story like that has a
Yeah.
lot of information. And that's why I like the old stories. So these stories have been around and they go from culture to culture. There's different versions. So, for example, Beauty and the Beast is 6,000 years old. So why is that? And understand that that's before there was even any writing. Nobody could write. So these stories were passed down from generation to generation orally, and it was the women. It was the women that kept the stories and passed them down. So there's such deep, deep wisdom in the stories that because of the wisdom, they've been considered valuable enough to be
Yeah.
passed down from generation to generation to generation. And so that for me was really exciting to know that embedded in the stories is amazing wisdom that we can use for healing.
Oh my God. You know what? When you start thinking like I never listened that was writing 600 like around there. This
1,000 years,
6,000 years, not 600. What? It's like
6,000.
I'm impressed and I like really shakes me inside because how many, I mean, the wisdom that is in that story that can impact the new generations now. Wow. And just
Yeah,
saying
and
like it's sorry, passing from women's also like,
yeah,
wow.
wow. And the reason why it was put into the stories is there was a time that the powers that be did not want the everyday person to have this wisdom because then they couldn't control them. So the ideas were put into the stories because back in the day, people got beheaded. People got murdered for passing on this information. So you know how women do. We just kind of tucked it in. Well, we'll just put a little story.
Yeah. So we call in Spanish the chisme, like it's just the gossip. You go and then you just pass the stories. Like, oh wow,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
that's a very beautiful,
Yeah.
like using my imagination, just
Mhm.
imagine the women passing the story. Now, these women never thought if they was alive now, how this story impacts
Yeah.
many generations. And now it's part of even a tradition, right? Like, you
Mm.
know this story to example so many things
Right.
in the world, which is amazing.
Right.
And for sure, there is so many moms
Mhm.
here, parents that listen us in my
Mm.
podcast that may listen this maybe change something in the way that tell stories to your kids, or maybe just start telling stories to your
Mhm.
kids, and
Mhm.
other thing, start telling stories to yourself too, because your inner child is there too.
Mhm.
So the stories are open a new pathway to our lives, and let's go take
Mhm.
it because it's easy.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of healing to be found in
It
those
is.
stories.
It is.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
Anita, thank you so much. I want to ask you if there's something that you want to talk that I didn't ask you, or something I should ask and I didn't. Please.
Well, there's one thing, and I would like your listeners to know that it's totally, completely possible to recover from an eating disorder. Recovered, period. Not always in recovery, not
Yeah.
no.
Please.
Again, like the weed, if you get the roots, you can clear it. And I believe that those that have um, been on the recovery journey and healed their eating disorder, as I said before, these are the people the world has been waiting for. Because what comes with that is an incredible amount of curiosity and compassion and empathy. And that's what the world needs right now. And so you are a perfect example of that. Look at what you're doing because you got on the recovery path and now you're paying it forward. And so I want people to know I've been doing this for over 35 years. I've seen hundreds of thousands totally, completely recover. I continue to get their letters and their emails, so I know it's true. And so I just want people to know that it's absolutely possible.
That's a beautiful message, Anita. We need that. We need that message. We need to really to spread it because there is many people that doesn't believe that could be recovered. They accept this is the
Right,
life. This
right.
they accept that in a very sad way.
Yeah.
They are going to be with them, and it's not. You
It's
have
not true.
another. It's not true. Yeah.
No, I've worked with people that have had an eating disorder their entire lives and they were able to clear it. I've seen the most in my treatment center in Maui. I've seen the most severe form of eating disorder and I've seen them completely recover. So I know it in every fiber of my being that it's possible.
Oh, beautiful. Anita, how the people can contact you, how the people can find you. We are going to put everything down.
Okay.
Just if you want to go and say like where here.
Well, you can find me at lightofthemooncafe.com. And I have a lot of different courses. Unfortunately, they're not in Spanish yet, but hey, maybe you can help me translate them.
Of course, I will be more than happy to do that.
Mhm.
I want all my people really read the book, go deep there because we need it. No one taught us. No
Mhm.
one taught us. And I thinking in that the sadness is like we have such a great like past history
Mhm.
that used to be there. But well, we go to the conquer and the conquerors came and just put the food in there and disappear all our wisdom and knowledge, but it was there and it's living inside of us.
And
So
in the stories, find the
yes,
stories.
find the story. Oh my God. I want to show you something that you say,
Yeah.
and this is beautiful. I have it here. Um, this is like, I don't know, did you see? I have a bingo with our traditions that my
Oh, look at that.
it is amazing. And everything have the story. My cousin bring it to me. And
Uh-huh.
you can see the images and that the cards that coming with the bingo have the story of all the characters here.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
It is amazing. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So let's go read the stories about us.
Mhm.
Anita, thank you so much. Thank you for all, well, your time here, your wisdom to share your experience with us. And it's going to be translating for sure. Thank you. I really appreciate. I am very honored to having you here. Please buy the book. It's in Amazon. It's in your page. Everything is going to be down, and we are going to find a way to put it in Spanish, of course.
Find a publisher for me and we'll do
Yes,
it.
yes, yes. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
beautiful day. Nos
Bye.
vemos muy pronto. Gracias por estar aquí. Gracias por escucharnos. Si quieren escribirle a Anita, vayan a sus redes sociales, escríbanme a mí, déjenme un mensaje. Y si hay más preguntas, por favor, no olviden hacernos. Gracias.